March the 13th, 2023. Guys, you're looking at an article that goes back to this past Friday. A lot happened on the 10th, didn't it? We saw it here in the banking situation. This is a link I'll give to you. You've seen it before. I'll put it in the link before. It's called warnews247.gr. And you're looking at three nails in the coffin of the U.S. dollar. And the reason I say that, there's China in the middle, and then you've got basically that used to be our enemies, Iran and Saudi Arabia. Check that out. What they had requested is to do away with the U.S. petrodollar and join BRICS. Now, this has been translated from Greek, so some of it's lost in there, but they fly the U.S. out of the Middle East. Now, remember what happened with our air base over there and the people that got killed when we flew out? It says, Iran, Saudi Arabia restored diplomatic relations with the mediation of China. They're going to the BRICS. Ugly developments for the West, Israel, and the USA. Now, this happened Friday. We saw some banks go down Friday, and that's continued. Now, something else I've said before. We know about possible dealings with China from you-know-who and his son, right? You understand that. And then we see these newscasts with we had to escort a China plane out of our airspace or vice versa or whatever it is, and saber rattling, right? I'm thinking that makes no sense because of you-know-who they've got over here in charge of whatever he's doing. But the man in the middle may be the boss of the whole thing. So what we're looking at is here the collapse of the dollar, the collapse of the banks. Now, is our administration in cahoots, or are they under the boot heel of the man in the middle? But you're talking about major oil people. And when you talk about the demise of the U.S. petrodollar and the influence it has as far as sanctions worldwide, everything you can think of, they use it as a battering ram. But the puzzle is getting a little more complicated. We've seen some back and forth again between the current administration and the man in the middle there, China. But we also know that where the purse strings are and where these secrets supposedly have been sold to and transferred and other information. So is this paymaster in the middle organizing the takedown on this end? Something to think about, and how it all ties together again with the current administration. In a move that destroys the Israel/South Arabia defense agreements and foreshadows unpleasant developments for the U.S. and the West, Riyadh and Tehran went ahead. They went ahead and got together and going in for the BRICS. Again, this is translated. It says, Iran and Saudi Arabia have announced the restoration of diplomatic relations following talks in China. According to a joint statement released today by the state media of the two Middle Eastern countries whose relationships have been severed since 2016. Undoubtedly, this is a historical development, not so much for the restoration of relations, but because of this development and the normalization of their relations, it is a prerequisite for both countries to enter into BRICS. Both Tehran and Riyadh have asked to join. If that happens, as everything seems to be, it will be the beginning of the end of the U.S. and the Middle East. The petrodollar is disappearing, and in the future, Turkey will follow. It means they're going to join. That's what they think. It says it was recently revealed that Chinese President Xi Jinping and the leadership of Saudi Arabia have agreed to jointly promote the China-Saudi Arabia Comprehensive Strategic Partnership, more than likely oil. According to the Saudi news agency SPA, the agreements signed are worth $29.6 billion for investments of mutual interest, strengthening of trade and cooperation in the field of energy. Saudi and Chinese companies signed 34 investment agreements in the fields of green hydrogen, information tech, cloud computing, transportation, and construction. It says China tops the list of oil buyers from Saudi Arabia and absorbed 25% of the country's crude exports last year, while we're not drilling, while refineries are being shut down. Do you see that there's a world game being being played to take down Babylon? In total, China bought 200 million metric tons of crude oil from Arab countries last year, and these deals will be expanded in the near future with payments in the yuan rather than dollars. So, guys, that's where we're at. I saw this. I thought we needed to talk about it. A couple of reasons. One is the U.S. relations in China they have two sides. One, it appears to be one of saber rattling, and while we know what's going on under the table. On the same day that this was signed, you saw those three guys standing there. We started seeing banks collapse here. It's the perfect takedown of the U.S. dollar, and it looks like we have Trojan horses in the swamp. We've known that for a long time, but it's getting very serious right now. This digital currency, by the way, that they've talked about, we've talked about it before, the new government coin that you'll have a card basically, and you'll have an allotment of things, like if you may not can get but one tank of gas a week or something like that, maybe a month. You put it back into a gas tank that says, no, you can't do that. You've already had your allotment, or food, or whatever it is. Who will be running that digital currency? It looks like we know, don't we? And you look at the lockdown situation they've had there for the last few years. But guys, is that what's coming? Is that what they're hoping for? We know we're going into the tribulation of man. And I think we've been seeing it happen in nations around the world for quite some time. And look who has led most of that destruction. Looks like it's coming home to roost, back to Babylon, guys. Hate to say it, but it's biblical. And you look at the history of what the leaders of this nation have done to other nations and to its own people now. Not much light on in D.C., is it? Pretty dark. We're watching it. You watch it, guys. It's a heads up. Be safe.